You mentioned that the Central Asia Institute schools have been safe because you don't have signs indicating that they have been funded by American dollars. So if the U.S. government says, yeah, you know, we like this idea of the mission of promoting education, how would they be able to fund to promote education and building of schools without it being a target for the extremists saying, you know, these are American dollars? You know, has that been talked about so that it couldn't happen on a grander scale, but they wouldn't be a target?
You know, I think sometimes when things happen at a grander scale, there's such macrocosmic things that we sometimes forget the human element. And the human element is when you go into these communities, you don't tell them what we're going to do. You ask them what they want. And when Greg asked these women, what do you want? You know, initially he was thinking they're going to say, I want a handsome husband, I want a big house, I want a ring. They were like, I don't want my children to die, infant mortality. And the second thing they said is, I want my daughter to be educated. So we listen to the community, whereas, you know, an entity like UNO, which has millions of dollars, or USAID, sometimes we'll see a Central Asian Institute school. And now remember, when we talk about Taliban or war, we're talking about Afghanistan, where we have 50 schools, and in Pakistan, where we have 100 schools, we're not operating in those regions, so we don't have any of those problems, because we're dealing with poverty and not war. And so it's a different dynamic altogether. But to get back to that, sometimes, you know, in these regions, we've noticed that it's about the community empowerment and the community coming together, which ultimately saves the school. But when you have a big entity and they're spending millions of dollars, what they sometimes do is they build these grand infrastructures. They build these big buildings without the heart, without first sending people who are from the community to speak to the community so that it becomes an accepted thing for the girls to go to school like we do. And I'm not saying that we have a better model, because there's so many mistakes that we make and we learn every day from those mistakes. But right now what's really exciting is that the USAID, the UNO, people like John Kerry, people like Kluger, people like Holbrook, even, you know, President Obama has heard about our model, are actually studying us. General Petraeus is, Mike Mullen is. But UNO, USAID are actually studying our community empowerment model at a formal level to see how they can, you know, do community empowerment and thus build, like you said, at a grander scale.
I had read that Greg Mortenson was up for the Nobel Peace Prize, and it was the one that Obama got. And I was thinking that his wife probably should be up for the Nobel I was wondering how his family, his wife, and his kids handled his life.
You know, it's another thing to think of Greg as this amazing, incredible hero. But to know the real man is to know that he suffers every day without his family. And I know Tara very well. We've been friends, and whenever we have fundraisers or they're out in Chicago, they'll spend the day with us, and our kids will get to spend the day together. I have an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old, and they love spending time. Greg Mortenson's daughter and his son are incredible. Tara has managed to really keep their sanity by just putting them in a lot of activities, by, you know, living in Bozeman, Montana, which is a really small town, so that her mother is nearby, so that her friends are nearby. You know, and she's an amazing woman who's a therapist as well, so she works full-time, but she also manages really well with the kids. But I agree with you, there should be a Nobel Peace Prize for the women in the wings, you know. Behind every great man, there has to be a woman who wins a Nobel Peace Prize.
This will probably be our last question.
I was just wondering how many people in the organization are traveling and speaking, maybe, I don't know, per year, or, you know, how does your outreach operate?
Generally, I don't speak. I'm more like a fundraising entity, and I kind of got into it willy-nilly because there were so many requests and demands on Greg time. We get around 5,000 requests a year for Greg to speak, and we narrow it down to 200, but it ends up being more than that, because if he's in a town and he's doing 200 engagements in a year, he's also going to be speaking in 5 different places that same day in a city. And sometimes it's insanity, because we will be in one town and I'm doing a 5-series event, and Greg will say to me at 5 p.m., okay, so we're going to end these at 12. Do you want to fly to Florida with me tomorrow? And we're in North Dakota. And I'm like, okay. You know, he's like, okay, let me just book your flight. And then he goes off and he speaks. Or sometimes he'll say, I just booked your flight. Or sometimes it's just crazy because I'm in a room right next to him and I'm like, Greg, our flight's ready. Me and Christiana, the Peninsula Peace Director, are ready to go. Our driver is here, we have a flight. He's like, well, I didn't tell you I canceled our flight. We're going 2 hours later. We're going to miss the first event. So Greg just gets inundated, I think, and he's an amazing resource, but his health is of the utmost importance to us, which is why people like me, honestly, do not like being in front. We like being behind the scenes because we do these big events. And Christiana, our Peninsula Peace Director, we're the only two that, aside from him, will travel and speak on his behalf. But he has a symptom called pericarditis, and so he's really in an unhealthy state right now, and is traveling with a physical therapist as well as a nurse. I don't know if that answers your question. Christiana Leidinger.
Someone else besides Greg, and that's it?
Yes, there's 3 of us, basically. Yeah.
And we're very lucky that she's here. It's a time for gift giving. And Kris, are you leading this part? I thought you were.
First, I just want to say thank you for accepting our invitation to come. Feel really fortunate. We have a couple of offerings today. The first one is in recognition of the Millennium Development Goals that was outlined in the Millennium Declaration in September of 2000. In September of 2000, 189 nations came together and made a commitment to reduce extreme poverty. They also made a commitment to achieving universal primary education, promoting gender equality and empowering women, reducing child mortality, and improving maternal health. We feel that Central Asia Institute has made significant contribution in those areas, and we're very thankful. One of the tenets of the Millennium Development Goals is that each nation, congregation, and person one of the tenets of Millennium Development Goals is that world poverty can be halved if every country, congregation, and person donates 0.7% of their yearly income to an MDG effort. So we at St. Mary's would like to make a contribution to you and to Greg Mortenson and to Central Asia Institute on behalf of the MDGs. Also, St. Mary's has an annual auction. This year we also raised money for Central Asia Institute. So today I'd like to offer you a check for $1,000. $1,711. Also, thanks to Red Balloon, we do have books for sale. We have 3 Cups of Tea, the Young Reader's version. We also have the picture book, Listen to the Wind. And then we also have A Lot of the Stones into Schools. It's a remarkable read. One thing I particularly liked about it is that it is written in Greg Mortenson's voice. So you really get to understand how he maneuvers in this world, and it's truly remarkable. If you'd like to make a donation, there's several different places where you can make a donation. Please write checks out to Central Asia Institute. And then lastly, I'd like to introduce Julia DeLuca and Maddie Breton, who led